The accident involved was a Boeing 737-800 registered as VTAXH, manufacturer's serial number 36323 and line number 2108. The aircraft first flew on 15 November 2006 and had an India Gate livery on its tail. The Air India Express, a wholly owned subsidiary of Air India, has a fleet of 25 Boeing 737-800 aircraft. The ill-fated aircraft was a 13-year-old Boeing 737-800 aircraft running on two CFM56-7B27 engines. The aircraft departed stand E6 and took off from runway 30R at Dubai International Airport on August 7, 2020, at 2:14 p.m. local time and was scheduled to arrive at Calicut International Airport in Kozhikode, Kerala, at 7:40 p.m. local time, covering a distance of 2,673 kilometers, 1,661 miles. It was a repatriation flight, for people who had been stranded abroad due to the COVID-19 pandemic, under the Vande Bharat mission. Wing Commander Deepak Vasant Satha was born on April 24, 1961. He was an ex-Indian Air Force officer who was commissioned in 1981 and served for 22 years. He started his career in the Indian Air Force by flying the MiG-21 supersonic jet fighter. He retired in 2003 as a wing commander and in 2005 joined Air India. He was a decorated officer who trained at the National Defence Academy, NDA, and was awarded the Sword of Honour at the Air Force Academy, India, in Dundigal. He was a test pilot for Hindustan Aeronautics Limited and operated Boeing 737 commercial flights, and Satha had landed successfully at Calicut Airport at least 27 times, including more than 10 times in 2020. Deepak Satha had planned to pay a surprise visit to Nagpur on his octogenarian mother's birthday on Saturday, his relative said. However, even before his mother could celebrate her 84th birthday, Kap Satha, 58, passed away in the air crash. He had last met his parents in March and was constantly in touch with them over phone since then. They had last spoken a day before the crash, his nephew Dr. Yashodhan Satha said. Captain had told some of the relatives that if flights are available, he would pay a surprise visit to his mother on her birthday, he said. Co-pilot Akhilesh Kumar and his wife Megha was expecting their first newborn. The aircraft arrived from the west, overflying the airport at 13:42 UTC. It then performed a teardrop approach to runway 28. This approach was discontinued, and the aircraft subsequently flew a teardrop approach to runway 10. The aircraft touched down at 14:11 UTC, 7:41 p.m. local time. The aircraft reached the airport on schedule. The approach was for runway 28, but 2 landings were aborted due to tailwind and the aircraft circled, waiting for clearance, before making a landing on runway 10. Due to the monsoon and floods in Kerala at the time, inclement weather conditions reduced visibility at the time of landing to 2,000 meters 6,600 feet. Runway 28 was in use, and in the first landing attempt, the pilot could not sight the runway and requested for runway 10. On the second attempt on 2,860 meters 9,380 feet runway 10, the aircraft touched down near taxiway C, which is approximately 1,000 meters 3,300 feet beyond runway threshold. The aircraft failed to stop before the end of the tabletop runway and plunged 9 to 10.5 m, 30 to 35 feet, into a gorge, splitting the fuselage into 2 sections upon impact. No post-crash fire was reported because the commander could have possibly shut down the engine, preventing further loss of lives. Calicut Airport, ICAO code VOCL, has an elevation of 343 feet above mean sea level. The airport has a single runway of length 9,831 feet and is capable of handling wide-body aircraft such as B-747s. The runway in on tabletop, with a drop of 40 feet on either side. After this incident, the runway has come under scrutiny and questions are being raised regarding the suitability of landing in inclement weather. The Calicut International Airport, located in Karipur, Kozhikode, is one of the riskiest and most unsafe airports in India as per Directorate General of Civil Aviation's 2011 data. Captain Mohan Ranganathan, a member of a safety advisory committee of the Ministry of Civil Aviation, in 2011, had called it unsafe and had recommended that it not be used for landing during wet conditions. He had noted that it had a tabletop runway with a downslope, and inadequate buffer zone or runway end safety areas at each end of the runway. Instead of a 240 m or 790 feet buffer zone, it had only 90 m or 300 feet. Engineered material arrestor system, also known as arrestor bed, was also absent in the airport, which could have averted the accident. Several warnings were ignored by the authorities. Due to inadequate runway end safety area and other safety issues, many international airlines had stopped landing wide-body aircraft at Calicut. In July 2019, the Directorate General of Civil Aviation issued a show-cause notice to the director of the Karipur Airport after various safety lapses like cracks in the runway, water stagnation and excessive rubber deposits were found. Cracks were reported at runway 28 touchdown zone and along with runway, center left, marking near runway 10 touchdown zone. Multiple cracks were also found on airport stands and apron surface. Excessive rubber deposits were found along runway center left marking of runway 10 touchdown zone. 1.5 meters 5 feet length of water stagnation was observed between the runway edge and intermediate turn pad on runway 28. The inspection was prompted when another Air India Express had a tail strike while landing at the airport from Dammam, Saudi Arabia. Global Flight Tracker website indicated that the Air India Express plane that skidded on the runway at Kerala's Kozhikode tried to land at least twice at the tabletop airport. Flight IX1344, a Swedish firm that shows real-time commercial flight tracking information on a map, indicated that the Boeing 737 NG that came from Dubai with 190 people on board tried to land twice. 84 passengers, 4 cabin crew and 2 cockpit crew were on board. 18 people died in the crash. 16 passengers and both pilots, and more than 100 people were injured. The Directorate General of Civil Aviation, Aircraft Accident Investigation Bureau and Flight Safety Departments have reached for investigating the accident. The Cockpit Voice Recorder, CVR, and the Flight Data Recorder, FDR, were recovered the next day and were sent to Delhi for analysis. Boeing is likely to send its investigation team to examine debris of the aircraft for defects. Initial findings suggest that at the time of landing, tailwind was around 9 knots, 17 kilometers per hour. The aircraft was 176 knots, 326 kilometers per hour, at an altitude of approximately 450 feet, 140 m, above the surface of the runway 10, which isn't considered ideal for short finals during bad weather conditions. Civil Aviation Minister, Hardeep Puri, in a press conference at Kozhikode on August 8 also said that there had been sufficient fuel on board for the aircraft to have flown to a diversion airport. The primary investigation report of Aircraft Accident Investigation Bureau should be ready by August 16. The Government of India and Kerala, each announced an interim relief of 10 lakhs, which is equivalent to $14,000 or 13,000 euros, compensation for the families of the deceased above the age of 12 years. 5 lakhs, which is equivalent to $7,000 or 6,500 euros, for below the age of 12 years. 2 lakhs, which is equivalent to $2,800 or 2,600 euros, for seriously injured, and 50,000, which is equivalent to $700 or 650 euros, for those who sustained minor injuries. It was also announced that the medical expenses of the injured would be borne by the state government. Times of India spoke to several pilots about the possible reasons of Friday night's calamity. Ideally, a landing should be made into headwinds. The plane was due to land on runway 28, but pilots probably couldn't spot it during the approach to land. Then the pilots decided to land from the opposite end on runway 10, but that meant a tailwind of at least 11 knots, possibly stronger. Photographs of wreckage show speed brakes on wings stowed away. Not clear whether they were deployed. The commander probably switched off the engines, preventing a fire and saving lives. Several pilots mentioned the possibility of aquaplaning when a layer of water builds between aircraft wheels and runway surface, leading to loss of braking action. Engineering material arresting system. A bed of materials at the end of a runway to halt overshooting aircraft should have saved the day, but Calicut Airport doesn't have such facility.